Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Super excited to have everybody here as we dive into Homebot and Mortgage Coach, kind of what's going on in the industry as a whole, and how you can leverage technology that works for you as your secret weapon against some of these mega brands. I will start by just briefly introducing our panelists here. We have Ernie Graham, who's the CEO and co-founder of Homebot, Dave Savage, the CEO and co-founder of Mortgage Coach, and then we have two lender rock stars, Shayla Gifford and Andy Zemon. Shayla's with Guild Mortgage and Andy's with Novus Home Mortgage. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I will turn it over to Dave to kick us off.
All right, guys. So I'm going to help MC this, but Ernie and I are the two hosts of this event as folks that, we've worked hard to be innovators, leveraging technology to help loan officers be more successful. And we can always talk about conversion, and we talk about conversion, and I'm sure that will come up. But something that is super important to all local referral-based mortgage professionals is retention. Like, you work so hard to find a customer who wants to do business with you, win their trust and respect, deliver a 5-star experience. Now, how do you make sure that you keep getting every single loan that they ever do? And how do you stay top of mind with them so that they refer every friend and family member that like, you got to use my lender? And so we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about how do you take that superpower and now turn that into a competitive advantage with real estate agents. So they're like, I not only want to refer my clients to this loan officer because they're going to close the loan on time, they're going to get a great rate, and they're going to keep every promise. But you know what? I'm going to get a better conversion if I refer it to them, and I'm going to get better retention if I refer it to them. So that's what this is about. So Shayla, thank you for joining us. We've got not just a lender rock star. She runs a team, she runs a region, and she coaches hundreds of loan officers. Not at the same time, but she has coached hundreds of top producers. How you doing, Shayla?
I'm good. I'm glad you clarified that, because sometimes I do feel like it's all at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. We have Andy Zemon, where if you Google modern mortgage advisor, I guarantee he will be one of the pictures. Like, he does it right. He connects at a human level. He's a good dude who really cares about people, and he leverages technology. What's up, Andy?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. And yeah, as I told you before, I learned all that from Shayla. She was my coach in a previous life, and I've just continued to follow her. The problem is she's still a rising star, and I'm still trying to catch her. So
come on,
cool to be on a call with her.
Come on.
Yeah, I know he was bummed when he said, "Hey, we're gonna go Shayla first, then you." He's like, "Oh no, I've got to follow."
I know. Set me up, Dave.
Right. So guys, let's bring on Ernie. I mean, Ernie's team put on this webinar, so they did a killer job of getting a lot of you saying, "Hey, I'm going to show up." So great job to the Homebot and Mortgage Coach marketing team. Ernie, when I think of innovators that have created technology that actually gets used by loan officers, I think of you, brother. And so let's talk about retention, what you want to make sure we cover over the next hour here.
Well, I think retention's not a new word for probably most of the people watching today. The angle that I like to put on it, though, is that sort of the old school ways of retaining aren't necessarily what works today. There are so many active technology players in the space that have data scientists, unlimited resources to spike the dopamine of all of our clients. And I think it's really important. It's not just what we're doing, but it's also how we do it. And our little twist on it is that our North Star is providing intrinsic value to the client, not just a reminder, hey, I'm here, and here, but how do we set ourselves up to consistently deliver value even after the transaction? And so that's going to be sort of my angle today. You'll hear me keep coming back to and banging that gong over and over.
Yeah, and guys, I want you to think of intrinsic value, obvious value, personalized value. And I want you to think as a mortgage originator of the things that you're sending out to a consumer, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a marketing reminder, whether it's text, email, video. Does it have, like, if you were a family and a consumer and this is your biggest liability and your biggest asset, does it have true value? And I think you're going to hear from two rockstar mortgage professionals why that's important and how they're implementing that. Anything else you want to say before we start bringing on? And just, again, this could be a mastermind, and audience, you guys are on the team. So if you put comments down below in Zoom, we will be looking for your questions and we will bring those into the conversation. But anything else you want to say before we bring on, Shayla, and we go back and forth?
Well, the one thing that I definitely want to sort of mention is that even though, we are on page in terms of intrinsic value, the reality is that all that other stuff is still valuable. It's just that there is a decreasing efficacy of those things that are happening. So I'm not saying this is a mutually exclusive discussion, that you just, you only do those things that have intrinsic value, and all those things that have dopamine, eye candy value, you throw away. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying those things are decreasing, but they still have value. I think the big shift right now that everybody is starting to say, aha, is, how do you create value, but also understand that it's not easy, that, we got to do masterminds like this to bring experts, say, how are you guys doing it? And, but I just want to be clear that I'm not being mutually exclusive about this kind of thing. I think that there's a big picture here of a lot of different tools and aspects to it.
Yeah. And before I ask you the first question, Shayla, I want to emphasize that we're talking about a lot of money that's at stake here. And we're talking about a lot of efficiencies, to win a customer and get a loan, it's 5 times more expensive. And guys, I interview top producers all the time and I say, how much harder is it to do a purchase in today's market versus last year? And it ranges from, it's 5 times harder to 10 times harder this year. So these numbers are kind of dated. Like, getting a new customer is expensive. It's hard work. And then the retention rate, it's, guys, most loan officers, even top performing loan officers that are great hunters, they're like a 20% conversion. That means I did 10 5-star loans that I killed myself over, and I'm only getting 2 of them back. I mean, that is the industry average. So Shayla, let's talk about, from your perspective as both a team leader and a leader of an entire platform and coaching people, why retention is so important in your words, and then we'll get into how you're doing it.
Well, first time ever, Zoom just shut down on me. So I'm so happy you ended your question right as it popped back up. But I think your question had to do with how do I provide intrinsic value? Is that what you had asked?
How are you doing retention? And I talked about, like, you as a team, you as a leader. Why is that so important?
Why I love hanging around you, Dave, and you, Ernie, is that you've really stretched me, both of you, in big ways. Dave, you brought up edutainment, and that was a word that I never heard before. And, Ernie, you really got me thinking about, I remember talking to you once and I said, okay, so do you go through Homebot and go through all the A's and then see if all the A's, who's looking at their value? And then do you call all the B's and do you send them their digest or make a video to them every 6 months? And I remember you saying, like, no, you meet the customers that are ready to meet. You use the technology in a way that is brilliant, and you find the people that are ready now, and this is why we have such cool intel as to who's looking at their market value, who's reading their digest, who's, putting their hand in the air. And that helped me so much, because I've built my business from 20 million to 40 million to 80 million to 100 million to 200 million by doing a lot of the old school mail, call, visit, email, client party. And while that stuff absolutely works, from a scalability and efficiency standpoint, and also intrinsic value, it's meeting the customer where they are and when they need us. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for expanding that. And then there's others, I just met with Deborah Bird yesterday, Dave, and really thinking about this part that maybe we weren't going to talk about on this call, but it's about, how do you bring your authentic self to the party? How are you following up with people in a way that's genuine to you? Are you wearing a ball cap when you're recording these videos because that's how you are and you show up? Are you wearing some t-shirt that's got these funny sayings? Are you a suit and tie person? Are you funny? Are you an educator? but just finding your unique, authentic voice and being in relationship. And that's in social media, that's in the educational process within Homebot and the new video manager, Ernie. So there's kind of all of these things, right? There's the old school stuff in retention, sending a letter from the heart and having a client party and getting face-to-face. There's getting on your activity screen every day inside of Homebot and looking at your weekly digest of what activity has been happening. And then there's also social media and being in relationship in a way that's authentic and not just business.
Yeah, no, really, really good points. And I hope everybody took, there's a lot of things that you need to do, but there's some things that you can do with automation. And we didn't talk about like specific brands, but guys, I don't think there's ever been so many mortgage Super Bowl ads as there were this year at the Super Bowl. There's never been as many public companies that are mortgage companies now. So what can be automated will be automated. And guys, they have your database. They have great technology to automate contacts. And so, we labeled this as, you got to win with these mega brands that are spending big money on media, big money on technology. And so you need to do what they can't do, and you need to do what they can do. Like do both things. So Andy, I'm going to come to you in a minute. Ernie, anything you want to comment on what Shayla just said, or any questions you have before we get into the how-to and some specific tactics?
I forgot that conversation. I'll meet them where they are. I do think that it's interesting though. Technology is both friend and foe here. The reality is that all of us on this call today, we're all consumers. We're all doing the same things. We're all spending too much time looking at content we shouldn't be looking at, be it, we're retargeted, we're on Amazon, where we have, all these apps on our phones that are distracting us. Well, guess what? All of our clients have that same level of distraction. So anything that we can do to give and help, like the Andys and the Shaylas, to be able to say, hey, that person right there is in the mood to be able to receive my advice. That's really powerful, as opposed to, I'm going to blast everybody into submission. and I think we should get into some of the details of that today. Now, Dave, I do want to mention this before we move on, because we were prepping on this call yesterday and Andy went off on that slide that you just showed. Could you just show the slide one more time, the 5X 20?
I absolutely will. And
because when I see that, there's like this cognitive dissonance by looking at this slide. You see that it's 5 times more expensive to get new customers. It's but yet there's only 20% retention in this industry. I dare say that Andy and Shayla's retention is a little better than 20%. But think about that for a second. How can that even be? And you've heard me say this before. I feel like that there is this obsession with the now, the immediate gratification of making hay while the sun shines, because we all know that's really kind of a practical, that's the reality. The rates are low now, the refis are now, someone's ready to buy the house now. And I feel like there's an over fixation on the now to the detriment of retention over the long period. And sometimes I feel like that professionals, both in lending and I think especially in like real estate, their horizon is too short. They may not even see themselves in business 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. So why in the world would they do an automation or have the discipline to do this kind of stuff if their whole world gets centered on the now? And so, Andy, I'm curious, your reaction to that. Do you feel like that lenders are overly fixated on the now and to the detriment of planning on the tomorrow and the next year and the next year and the next year?
Yeah, I think first, I think it's human nature, right? There's a fear, and so people spend a lot of time focused on now, because now pays the bills. Loans you pick up today pay this month's mortgage payment. They put food on the table, and there is a way to create a nice happy medium, right? And it starts. It's a process, right? And the process is focus on the horizon, right? But don't forsake today. You still need business today. So, I told you I wasn't going to forget what I said yesterday, and I'm not, but I'm actually going to add to it a tiny bit, because those of you that don't know me, like I'm a big dummy. Okay. Like I'm a perfect example of why, if you just work hard enough, anybody can achieve at least some level of success in this business. So I had to Google intrinsic value. I mean, I thought I knew what it meant, right? But I Googled it because you guys have been using this word a lot. And here I am, this big dummy. And I'm like, this is part of the problem, right? Maybe there's one other dummy on this call that I can help here, but here's the definition, right? Intrinsic value is the value of what an asset is worth, right? Not necessarily used in the stock market, not necessarily what the stock trades at today, but what the worth and value of that company legitimately is in that share. So the point, to add to what I said yesterday, which the rest of the group isn't privy to yet, is people wake up, loan officers wake up, and they're confused about what their job really is, right? And so like 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, I woke up and realized, because I had this life event occur that we won't get into on the purpose of this call. I do it with my counselor all the time, but we get into this life event, right? And this life event occurs, and I'm like, I'm confused about my job. My job is a whole lot easier if I wake up every day and I figure out how I'm going to be a sales rep for my business partners. I'm going to sell houses for my realtor. I'm going to sell houses for my builder. I'm going to help get insurance for my agent. I'm going to bring challenged tax scenarios to my CPA. And I'm going to spend all day doing that. And then I'm going to surround myself with people that I can teach. That's my business philosophy. And they're willing to reciprocate. And in order to do that, right, we understand that the value of the client, that intrinsic value, to use that buzzword now, is much, much, much greater. And so we spend our time focused on today at the sake of what tomorrow is, mostly because we're confused about our job. Our job is to be, Dave's slide says, the captain of the wealth team. I want to be the person that no matter what, my clients trust coming to, and they tell their friends and they tell their family about, when they say, you need to go talk to Andy because he had the worst auto mechanic problem I've ever heard of, and he had a great person help him. Okay, I don't make any money on an auto mechanic, but you know what? I'll probably do most of the mortgages at the mechanic shop if I put enough value in their pockets, right? That's my job. And loan officers are being, for the sake of just doing a mortgage, we're going the way of the dodo bird, right? We are legitimately 20 years shy of where financial advisors were, where they were 20 years ago. They're relationship managers. Everybody that manages our money doesn't actually know anything about the market. Half the people, if you ask them intrinsic value, they're going to do what I did and Google it. So the point is they're just better at the relationship game than we are. And you know what? With tools like Dave's created with Mortgage Coach and with Homebot, even a goofball like me has figured out how to add value in automation. And so that's the disconnect, man. I think that's where we miss it. It's where we're all confused.
I love that. I love that the relationship game versus the transaction game, right? And to actually having to be a great at the relationship game. I had not thought of it that way before. Dave, what do you think about that comment? You're on mute. Dave, you're on mute.
So when I interview the best and I look at the best retention rates, how that mortgage professional sees themselves and their job is different. The loan officer that has the optimized conversion and the best retention, they're not just a loan officer, they are the captain of the wealth team. And what does that mean? They've got realtors as clients. They've got financial planners as clients. And they see part of their job is not just closing a loan, but helping a family build wealth with real estate, with their biggest asset and their biggest liability. And they see themselves as, you know what? I'm not an asset manager that helps families optimize their asset portfolios. I'm a debt manager. I help to make sure that they get the most efficient, most effective debt to achieve their real estate goals. So Shayla, I would love to have you come in and comment on just the big picture. How should the modern originator of today see themselves? And then let's get into the how-tos, like specific tactics, strategies, and some scripts.
Well, I can totally echo what Andy said about being confused about our job. And I think a lot of us don't love being salespeople, and we feel maybe we're being cheesy, or we're going to be bugging our clients, or, following up too many times. And we have all these things that go on in our head. So if we really think about what do people want in a business relationship, they want trust, they want respect, and they want connection. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And they want to be understood. What's in it for me? What am I looking for? When I call a bike shop and I'm looking for an electric mountain bike, super simple for them to go, okay, this is what she's looking for. She's a size medium, and follow up with me every 3 weeks in a text message. And I think they're unbelievable, because the bar in my mind is so low in terms of most businesses thinking about the long-term business instead of the now business. And that we don't have any bikes right now. Maybe we'll have some in October. Same thing as we don't have a boat in all of 2021, but we will in 2022. How many people are building a wait list? How many people are saying, I can't refinance you today, but it would make sense when your rate's at 3.25%. And they're actually noting that in their CRM, and they're explaining to the customer why that's their trigger, and they're building trust that we will call you back when that is the case. That's a customer that will sit and they will wait and they will trust you and they will refer you because they feel like you've got their back and you're anticipating their needs, and you understand what they need and why they care. So I think a lot of times we're wanting to promote ourselves and say, hey, don't forget about me, remember me. And that's how we're showing up at social, and that's how we're showing up in our letters from the heart and everything else, when really, and I think, that's what both Mortgage Coach and Homebot is about, is like, let's talk about what they care about. And they care about getting their kid off to college, or remodeling their kitchen, or, getting into that better school district. So I think it's about asking good questions. I think it's about listening. I think it's about talking what you say, Dave, about fear, hopes, and dreams, and asking the meatier questions. 2 more questions than what's comfortable. I love from the Modern Real Estate Summit, Cody Gibson starting out saying that, the size of your life will be equal to the size of the questions you're willing to ask, something to that effect. So anyway, asking good questions, listening, and then providing that real value for them, whether it's educational through a total cost analysis, whether it's their digest every month through Homebot, and then responding when they actually put their hand in the air. Because Ernie, you and I talked about that a couple of months ago, that actually we're now held more accountable, especially when people are on social media playing this, I love to educate, and here I am doing all this stuff. And then when your client actually puts their hand in the air and says, okay, I want to talk, and then you don't follow up, you don't respond to that need, now we really look like fools. And so I think we got to use the tools, but we have to be responsive professionals.
Well, we've only got about 9 more minutes with you. So I want to get a script out of you before we go. And then Andy, we'll be spending the second half drilling down and getting your scripts. I want to make sure we get into some tactics and strategies. And I know, 1, you coach this, and 2, your team implements this, that when a family's making a decision on a mortgage, a fee worksheet is a dated way to do it. A combination of both Mortgage Coach and Homebot are something that you do at the point of sale. So that's like part of the conversion. And then when you look at how you manage that family and help that family over time in a way that has intrinsic obvious value, you put them into Homebot. They're getting this monthly report. So they're being able to manage the biggest asset and liability of their life. And then, of course, the thing I love, and we'll close out this, guys, with how do the two integrate. But if the family's like, oh, I want to see what refinancing looks like, it comes right back to that Mortgage Coach TCA, and then it has an annual review. So what I'd love to do, because I want to get some tactics for folks, because what I have found is that, well, there's a lot of loan officers that use these 2 programs together. Some people get even better results because they've got great scripting, great phrases. They sequence it right in the question. So before you leave, I want to know, 1, how you do that with the family. Like, what's that sound like? How do you describe this automation powered value prop, but in a superhuman way? And then before you leave, I also want to hear, how do you position that and describe that with a real estate agent or some type of referral partner? You're on mute.
You want me to roll right now on that?
Yeah. Just,
Okay.
we don't have to ring, but I want to hear.
Well, I did want to take a minute because Dave and Ernie, we've been working at Guild Mortgage with Mortgage Coach and Homebot for probably 2, maybe 3 years now.
3.
And in this refi boom, our portfolio retention, meaning the loans that we service with Guild, which is a couple 100,000, our retention has been as high as 69% of people refinancing and staying with Guild, which is absolutely insane. So I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think being a local lender that is relationship and referral based, however the relationship starts, will be a big indicator how it continues. But obviously the value that we've provided in the pre-approval and giving the advice will help us in getting the next loan, especially if we're the ones that are proactive. If we're using our sales force and we're looking at, our data and running reports and saying who's in the money, we're running algorithms and analytics and saying, these are the people I need to be reaching out to proactively. That's going to help with that retention. So anyway, I just love being competitive. And I think that if you are somebody on this call thinking about Homebot Mortgage Coach, to me, it's just a no-brainer because having these two tools provide value through the client throughout both a purchase and a refinance is just insane. So let's talk about scripting Homebot now on the, excuse me, both Homebot and Mortgage Coach on the purchase side, because the purchase then eventually leads to the retention and the refi, right? So something I recently learned, I'm embarrassed to say, but I was so excited to find out, is that when we're doing a pre-qualification, that is the moment to put them in Homebot as a buyer lead in Homebot so that they can start getting the buyer experience inside of Homebot, because that takes them out of the traditional Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com loop where they're going to get stuck on the dopamine, and those companies are going to sell thousands of dollars worth of leads from that situation. So it's an immediate intrinsic value add to the buyer. And it's value for us and the real estate agent. As long as you can position that and explain that well, people will see it that way. So at the time of pre-qualification, the script goes like this. Hey, thank you so much for doing a pre-qualification with me. It looks like based on the data that I have that you're approved for about $525,000. Do you kind of know which area of town that you're looking in? Yes. Okay. I'm going to plug in the zip code. We've invested in a software that is phenomenal and gives you all kinds of data that you wouldn't generally get on the common websites for home search. It'll tell you how long houses are staying on the market, but really how long it might take you to complete a move and how hot or cold that market or submarket or zip code is. Because let me just tell you, Dave, that the stat is that 80% of the wealth for Americans over 62 years old is in the equity of their home. So making the right decision when you buy a house is going to be monumental to the wealth that you're going to create in real estate. So I want to provide this tool for you right at the beginning of your search so that you can look at the market and be a more discerning home buyer by having this data. So you're going to love it. You'll get an email introduction and you can check that out and start searching for homes and do everything that you love to do, but with a different twist. So that's Homebot. The next step is I want to sit down with you for a full pre-approval. In order to be competitive in today's market, you got to be educated and you got to know exactly what you can afford and get approved for. And you've got to have a really solid pre-approval letter, even underwritten credit approved letter in order to be noticed with a multiple offer situation. So I'd love to set up a meeting. We're going to need all these documents for us to meet. And then I'm also going to do a financial plan for you to go over different mortgage strategies so that you can understand how you might be more competitive in this market and achieve the goals that we've talked about for payment, cash to close, investing, whatever they have told me. So that's always how I've been successful is this is the value I'm going to provide. And then hopefully they get a wow. And then every time you're getting a wow, you're also asking for referral. Well, yeah, this is what I do. I don't get paid to do pre-approvals and pre-qualification, but this is how I work. If I help enough people understand the market and educate them, I in turn will do business. Do you know anybody else that's looking to buy a home or that's currently renting? I'd love to have the same, educational meeting or advisory meeting with them. So
Shayla,
in that go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. If you were going to cover the appraisal gap, I do want to cover because it's so competitive right now and I do know you got to jump pretty soon, but that you got to make sure people are willing to make the biggest offer possible. Are you going to cover that?
Yeah. And then I've got a coaching call. But I'll be 2 minutes late for them. They'll understand. Here we go. Are you sharing it?
Oh, I'll share it. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is just a generic one, but obviously you can customize it for your buyer. This is Happy Homeowner. What we did is we put in 4 different strategies here. The first is our offer, where the purchase price is $500,000, putting $100,000 down, or a $400,000 loan amount. And then you can see the payment and the cash to close. The scenario 1 is that the appraisal hits or the appraisal comes in. So kind of preparing our buyers in that pre-approval meeting about how, if you're going up against a cash offer, even if it's lower, you might not get accepted because they're afraid that the appraisal might not come in. And 23% of escrows right now are falling out nationally because of low appraisals and buyers not willing to come up or sellers not willing to come down. So I want to prepare you in advance to have a contingency plan so that if the appraisal comes in low, we're ready. And we can also present that when we make the offer. Hold on, got to close my.
So guys, when I interview top performing loan officers, this is consistent. They're getting that consumer not only pre-qualified, but prepared for what if the appraisal doesn't come in? Anyways, go ahead, Shayla.
So option 1 is the appraisal comes in $30,000 low. What are we going to do? Well, I adjust your loan amount a little bit by $500 because we are going to utilize mortgage insurance to deal with that shortage, so that my goal is to keep your payment the same and your out of pocket the same, even with a $30,000 low appraisal. So I would put your loan amount at $399,500.
Sorry.
Is this where you want to be? I think you want to be under more info.
Oh, you want me to go?
If you want to show where the LTV is, that's super helpful.
Right here. Closing cost right here.
Right there. So if you highlight there, Dave, at 85% loan to value, you're going to pay the cheapest mortgage insurance. So we could utilize an upfront mortgage insurance, which only costs you $1,400 plus an additional $500 down payment. So you're coming up with an additional $1,900, but your payment stays the same and you can shore up a $30,000 appraisal gap, which now makes you super competitive. Now, what happens if the appraisal comes in $50,000 low? I can tweak your loan amount a little bit. I can get you at a 90% loan to value. So I can have you come in with even a little bit less cash to close, even with having to pay almost $3,000 in mortgage insurance upfront. But the payment stays the same. I think it's like $10 difference. And your cash to close is right at $112,000, same as if you had put 20% down. So bottom line is that you've got power having this kind of down payment. You've got leverage, and it's our job to communicate that. So with your permission, I am going to call this listing agent every time you write an offer, and I'm going to tell them the strength of your file. And I'm going to let them know that we've gone over contingencies if that appraisal were to come in $30,000 or $50,000 low, and they don't have to worry about that low appraisal. Is that okay for me to do? Yes, great. I will actually do a video with this contingency plan explaining to the seller's agent so they can explain to their seller, and hopefully that will be the key to getting you the deal.
Shayla, such a gift having you on this call. I know you've got to jump to another meeting that you've had in advance. Ernie and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Bye, Andy.
So Ernie, you are on mute, just as a heads up. I want to summarize a few things. We're about halfway through this, 3 minutes over halfway. We've got a lot more to share. I want to remind you guys, if you have questions, put them down below. But the key to optimize retention, you heard Shayla talk about the results that they're getting at Guild. Guys, those results are 3 times national averages. They're best of breed conversion, and it's worth millions of dollars in profits organizationally. And for each loan officer that's listening to this, it could double your profits. It could double your production. I mean, we're talking about really meaningful things that don't require more hours in the day and don't require more time. It's just when you're in that conversion stage, you're earning trust, you're earning respect, you're going beyond the fee worksheet, you're going beyond the transactional questions, you're delivering real advice and value, you're putting them into HomeBot so that you're taking Zillow and whatever app they're using. I mean, they're still going to use them, but they're going to use them less. And you're giving them a unique value prop. And then you're managing that over time. So Ernie, anything you want to add to that before we bring Andy in and do kind of the same thing with him? Like, let's go strategic and let's go tactical.
Sure. Shayla dropped a knowledge bomb right there that's so subtle, but so powerful. For those of you who aren't familiar with HomeBot, we started out as really working with the homeowner so it's a portal, if you will, that gives the homeowner ways to track their home value and their equity, but it also gives them a lot of intelligence on how to build wealth. Well, a lesser known aspect of HomeBot is the buyer side of it. And the reason I bring this up is because Shayla said this at the beginning. She said, right at the pre-qual level, she gives them HomeBot as a buyer. So this is really savvy for actually a few different reasons. Number one, she's getting them into an experience that makes them less prone to spend time elsewhere where their eyes are going to be monetized as a lead for somebody else. So that's powerful. The second thing, to your point and to her point, is it right out of the gate at just the pre-qual level, she's giving them a thing of value, of intrinsic value. And I just think that is like, it's like, hey, whether you end up doing the loan with me or not, I'm going to give you something that's going to help you be more successful. There's the benevolency around that builds trust, but it still has to have value to them. And that's where the HomeBot tool being used that way. But the third thing that she didn't say that I'm going to say for her now that she's gone is the worst case, or actually there's two scenarios. The worst case scenario is that pre-qual, that potential prospect that doesn't do a deal with her. Let's say that they don't buy a home or they use somebody else. She's already embedded a value with them that's going to keep on giving over time. Who does that? Who gives you value even when you say, I don't want to work, I'm not going to work with you on this particular deal. So what's neat about that, the way HomeBot sort of transforms too, is that if they end up buying a home with somebody else, HomeBot then they can put their address into that home, and then HomeBot provides more intrinsic value around that home. But guess what? Shayla's still attached to that. Shayla's now delivering value, whether they buy from her, they don't buy from her. So now she's working on not a retention strategy, but now she lost the deal, but the system is automatically promoting her and engaging her with them to get the next deal or to get a referral. In other words, it's really it's so subtle, but I hadn't heard any customers express that in terms of their script and their process of ASAP delivering that thing of value.
So I want to make sure everybody connected the dot here. And I have heard that. I mean, there are top producers in the mortgage coach community, and we talk about front load that value. Ask a couple of questions, deliver a total cost analysis, get them in HomeBot, give them as much value as possible so that they've in the palm of their hand on their mobile device, wherever they're at, they're getting the HomeBot value. And guys, the beauty of these two technology partners is Mortgage Coach is integrated. They're getting the Mortgage Coach value. They're getting that total cost analysis integrated. You do that at the front end. And then, of course, guys, you saw how Shayla walked through getting a family comfortable to make a winning offer in today's bidding wars. Make sure that they understand, hey, plan A is I get it for the price I want. Plan B, it doesn't come in and I have an appraisal gap. Plan C, it's horrible. I pay a lot more than I wanted to, and I do get an appraisal gap and it's a lot bigger, but they're comfortable. Guys, this is how you optimize conversion and you optimize the long-term value of the customer. And I want you to write this down. If you've got 1,000 past customers in HomeBot, at a minimum, that's 100 loans a year. It's basically a 10% annual pull-through rate. In a big refi market year like last year, it's a bigger number than that. Most loan officers have 1,000 past customers in a database. They're getting 20 to 30 loans a year out of that. If you're doing it all right, we're talking hundreds of loans. And again, the bigger the database, if you've got 50 families in there, a minimum of 50 loans a year, just because you used Homebot and Mortgage Coach together. So Andy, we have not heard from you for a while. After hearing Shayla's scripting, one, do you have any impressions on that? And then I'd like to get some of your scripting, both what do you do with the consumer? And then how do you take this value prop and actually describe it to an agent or any type of referral partner so that they give you more referrals? So you're like using this retention platform to actually get more referral partners.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously, like I said before, Shayla is Shayla. That's just, she's phenomenal. And the only crappy part about being on the call with her is that I have to follow her. So there we go. Okay. Before I get into some of the things that I say, I use a lot of the same stuff she does. I just use a different script, right? So I'm going to share some things that maybe resonate with a different group of people here. But before I do that, I was thinking, this will tell you guys, this will show you I'm a big knucklehead. So I was thinking, what are Homebot and what are Mortgage Coach, right? And I've used Mortgage Coach since when it was a desktop program and it was endorsed on Loan Toolbox back in long time ago, right?
Back in the day. And I started using Homebot when Oleg out in California, when my coach at the time, Oleg was like, you got to check out this thing, Homebot. I'm like, all right, cool, let's try it. So those two softwares have, without question, have now both, as a result of this year, have now both made me more money than any employee I've ever hired, right? Probably cumulatively, right? Than any sales rep, any loan officer I had. The systems are that good. And so really I started thinking, it's like, I got an affinity for peanut butter and for chocolate. Well, Dave, you could be peanut butter, and Ernie, you're chocolate. But when you guys came up with the integration between the two, chocolate, okay, please. You can be chocolate, Ernie, you're peanut butter. Okay. But this legitimately, you guys became the Mortgage Reese cup. When you guys had this integration, it was like, I can't put it down. It's phenomenal. I've gotten to the point where with this software, with the integration, legitimately 10-minute calls, refi calls, they're the most impactful thing ever. And Dave, you and I did a presentation on that. I think at some point, maybe it's on, I don't know, the Mortgage Coach page or Mortgage
something like that.
Mortgage Coach YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, super cool stuff. So guys, thank you for the integration. But here's the thing, when I'm presenting this information, so we use the buyer report, I use the homeowner report. The terminology that I use when I present this also is the same terminology I use when I present it to a realtor, which is, look, my primary job to the consumer isn't to convince them to do a mortgage with me. And I tell them this out front, right? So it's what I call unselling the competition. I want to make sure everybody else that they ever speak to from this point forward sounds like a salesperson, because they're more likely to come back to me. So I unsell the competition, right? By saying, look, my primary job isn't to convince you to do a mortgage, not with me, not to buy a house. It's to keep you from making mistakes. That's my job. And the best way that I can do that is to give you more information than you want or need or had any idea even existed. And to do that, we've created a couple different platforms that are going to help you. One, I call my artificial realtor. And they go, huh? I'm like, my artificial realtor. This is designed to give you the information that you need, that you're terrified to ask a realtor because you feel like they're going to sell you a house. I don't want you to ever have to have a difficult conversation that you're not ready to have yet. So if I can create a platform that gives you the data that helps you make good decisions, then fantastic. And maybe along the way, that's enough for me to do a mortgage for you. The second thing that we do is we don't use old school two-dimensional mortgage reports. We don't use the two-dimension, right? If you were going to play a video game today, would you play Atari Pong or would you play the newest PS5 game? Well, one's a lot more immersive. You'd play the PS5. It's a lot more enriched, right? Cool. Well, we present our data in a three-dimensional format, arguably a four-dimensional format, because most of the time I put video and audio to it. That's Mortgage Coach. The whole point is even if my competitor is using Mortgage Coach and Homebot, they're not using an artificial realtor and they're not using a three-dimensional mortgage report. Those are things that cause the client to ask, what are you talking about? Now they're engaged. They're asking me what it is that I'm going to present to them and how I'm going to help them make good decisions, or more importantly, keep them from making mistakes. So that's how I present the data to both, homeowners, right? And to home buyers. And that's how I present it to the realtors, which is, or your choice is realtor. You can refer that client to anybody that you would like, but the chances are good they're going to get stuck in some other vicious cycle of information and they're going to get pillaged away. Statistically, right? If you look at what the big box, because the whole point of this presentation was to talk about how do we compete with the big boys, right? Okay, we're confused if we think that the big boys and girls that are out there are really interested in the mortgage. No, there's a lot of value in all of the other ancillary, things that they're going to sell, the services they're going to sell, and they do not want the client getting to the realtor first. They want to control that lead. So what do? Well, we use that to help us sell, right? They're not our competitors. We use what they're doing to help us promote our own businesses. So Dave, we go to our realtors and we say this. Well, look, even when you close that, just know at some point in time, that client's going to click on a Quicken ad, and they're going to go into the Quicken cycle, and Quicken's going to put them in their real estate model, right? Rocket Homes, I think is the name of it. And then they're going to refer that out to one of their referring agents. And even if you're one of the agents in their little, brokerage that they're growing, they're probably statistically not going to refer it to you. And if you had to ask yourself, Dave, would you say you do a great job, a good job, or no job of staying in touch with clients after they close? And they always say I do a good job. And well, they don't. They do a bad job. And that's okay. Because where we fit the bill is we keep them in that environment, right? We keep them in our environment for that realtor. And that goes back to that retention piece, right? So that's what I say. I mean, it's not as polished as Shayla, that's for sure. But it seems to work.
I want to do a mortgage with you, Andy. I mean, I got to tell you something. It's like that. I think is such a huge perspective shift. You're unselling, you're setting traps for the competition, but most importantly, you're setting up for the long-term relationship when you say, hey, I'm here to help you not make mistakes. And I think that even if I didn't use you for a loan, I would then want to find a reason to then come back and use you for a loan because you're the guy that's going to help me not make mistakes. I also think it's important to illuminate or to focus on the fact that these big direct, like the Quicken Shop or whatever, they're about closing the deal, man. You are it's a funnel. It's about closing the deal. And that's just the way they're constructed. It makes me it makes me want to dust off my Sun Tzu Art of War and figure out which chapter you read to come up with that one.
And that's it. But they're really good stuff, guys. And I hope that for whatever it's worth, I hope that helps somebody out there.
Well, I know it will. I want to remind the audience we're in the last 15 minutes. If you have questions, put them down below. We've had a few people ask questions about how to sign up for either Mortgage Coach or Homebot. We will put links down below and tell you those as we get into the closing. What I'd love to do, and everybody listening, you got a great script for the consumer at the point of sale from Shayla, and you just got a great script and a process from Andy to a referral partner. Andy, would you mind showing your screen? Because I think we've covered high level, we've covered results. Yep. You know why they do this. You kind of know how, but let's get into it, man. Do you mind just giving us a 5-minute? And I don't want you guys to think of this as a demo, because if you want to get a demo of Mortgage Coach or Homebot, we want you to schedule a demo. We'll give you a link, but I want to get like a virtual site visit. I want to for 5 minutes, everybody parachute into your office and see how you're using these two platforms.
Yeah. So can you see my screen now?
We can.
All right, cool. So this is the buyer version of the Homebot report. So I'm the buyer. My budget's $425. Client can go in, change price point. I can go in and change price point on my end. And the thing that we use when I present this information to a client is there's a video that goes along with it. So when they get their report, there's a really quick, 45-second video of me. I may not have met them yet. I may not have had a chance to send out my mortgage coach yet with a video on it. I want to put a face to a name, and I want to be real, right? It's the same video that I send out to everybody, but I stumble through it. I cross up my words, a little at my own expense humor, just something to make them feel like the video is personal. It's not polished. They don't want it to be polished. They want to think that you just recorded it in a second for them. And it goes out. And I explain a little bit about the report. Like this is really cool. I think that people really gravitate towards this, which is going to be their market temperature. It shows them how their particular market is changing. You can see here, I've got 22901 here in my area. We're a 96. Okay. So I use this to explain to the client in further follow-up calls that we're on. Hey, what do you think of your market? I go in and look at it. We say it's a 96. I'm like, okay, here's what that means. That means you better be prepared to not ask for closing costs. You better be prepared to pay more than asking price for the property. And I better give you Shayla's what happens if the appraisal doesn't support itself mortgage coach report, right? That's it. Like if you see a house on the market, and we can talk about it, like buying timeline, 100 days. If you got a market temperature that's a little bit lower, then we can start to talk about, you know, how that helps you in your offer position. But what I really like about this report is the buyer gets to ask us questions in the form of little tiny bubbles, right? And in this case, this could be a custom question, or what if they just want to know this? Look, they click the button and a message was sent. And inevitably, I can imagine the client on the other end of this thing going, oh, what did I just do, right? Well, what you just did was you communicated with Andy, and Andy gets an email and it says, what areas should I be looking at? That tells me that you're active in your report and I should probably engage with you. And I have a reason to. They ask me a question. I call them and I say, hey, Steve, I just saw the message. You're looking at some different areas. That's cool. Let's talk about that. Let's put some of those in. Let's get on a call and let's do this. Let's build this report out together. So the design is they only are engaging with me when they want to engage with me, because let's face it, it's how the consumer operates. Consumer doesn't want the sales call. You know, there was one thing I meant to say earlier that I didn't say yet, which is this, and this is why the Homebot report for homeowners works so well. As if they ever really got done, the annual review is dead. I called it. It's dead. On today's call, it is dead. It doesn't exist. If you're doing annual reviews, let me know, because I want to come to your market and I want to introduce everybody to Homebot. The reality is annual reviews, one, never happened, right? Maybe Shayla did them, but two, they are dead. So let's not use those anymore. Let's take a look at what Homebot does when you own a house. Now, this one, I'm gonna basically black out the information or as much as I can, but I didn't have a template one that I could use. This is an individual that did a mortgage with me. We'll show you what the mortgage looks like. So they have the same bubbles. When they get their report, they can click the same bubbles, and we can see here, right? I picked this one because this is going to be one that I refinance. This is one that slipped through the cracks. So what happens? Well, we can see here that this loan was done. They're carrying a much higher than market rate. So one other thing that I like is this. If I'm talking to a client and I never did a mortgage for that client before, and I know the client's name, email address, and their address, I enter it into Homebot and I have all their mortgage data. So I already know what type of loan they had and they did, and I know how to sell it. I look like a magician when I say I don't need anything from you. I don't need your credit report yet. I'll get all the data I need off this. Don't worry. And then what I do is I go over to the homeowner's report and I scroll down here and I can see I got these awesome little options that the client would see. And I can tell how much money I could potentially save them based on varying types of loans, just like they can. So if I'm in the report with the client and I click, what's your rate? And I click, oh, there's my video, right? That was just recorded, say Mickey Mouse in the background. And I click get a detailed report. Let's do it. Guess what I just did? I just created a total cost analysis. Now, the way my system is set up, I have 1 hour to send this total cost analysis before it automatically sends it. Well, I don't want it to automatically send because I like to customize mine. I like to put a video on them. So I go over to my mortgage coach, and this is let me see if I'm in the right one here. This one is a purchase. That's the purchase. Let me do the refi one real quick. So I'm over here in my mortgage coach. And if you guys watch the video that Dave put up there earlier, you'll see my 3 golden rules of refinancing. I think that's the one he put up there. I sell refinances differently. I tell clients they should not refinance until we mathematically prove that they should. And the 3 rules are, number 1, they're going to stay in their house at least another 2 years, because nobody does this for 6 months of savings. The mortgage process sucks. Number 2, right? Number 2, they save at least 10% of their current principal and interest payments. Why? Because it sets us up for number 3, which is whatever their monthly savings is, right? Am I in the right report here? Whatever their monthly savings is, Oh, it's opened up the same report. Darn it. Dave, I screwed it up, man. Anyway, I'm going to go through it. Whatever their monthly savings is, gets fed back into the mortgage as a test. And if it doesn't save at least 3 years on the term of the loan, we did something wrong and they shouldn't do it. So those are the 3 tests. And Dave's got a video on that. It has not failed me. It's a 15-minute presentation. I'm done. And on an average loan, what do you make on your average loan? If you only have to spend 15 minutes making that kind of money, that's a pretty good life, right? So in the purchase world, here's how we illustrate it. It's not as detailed as Shayla's, right? I didn't do the appraisal one. I have done that one before, but I use this one to illustrate what happens if they use or want, for example, less cash used at the closing table. Cash to close. What are we illustrating? Well, we're illustrating, in this case, seller paid closing costs, really buyer finance closing costs. Price of the house went up, closing costs included in the loan, cash to close goes down, payment goes up. What are you happier with? Are you happier with $30 a month higher payment and $7,000 less in your pocket, or $250 out of your pocket and a little higher payment, right? And then the client inevitably says, yeah, but I saved up this 5%. So what does that do? Like, that's got to really drop my payment. Like, I don't know. Let's take a look. And what I do, guys, is I love to build these out while I'm on a call with the client. I stop. I build out 1 or 2. I always build it out while we're on the call so they can see the magic of this process. It doesn't look like a canned sales pitch. It looks like, oh, wow, he put this together for me. This is what he's doing right now. And so there's some authenticity to doing it in real time, but you have to get good at it and your report built out. So you put 5% down. Cool. Guess what? Your rate just went up. Also, your payment barely went down, but your cash to close went way up. So what's more important? And we let the client make the choice, right? At the end of the day, it presents, total interest percentages. Why would you ever pick the one that has the highest interest percentage? You probably wouldn't. So that ultimately can all be put together in the span of minutes once you get good at it. And Dave and Ernie both have a lot of videos and integration out there to help with it. So that's a quick tour. That's my office. That's behind the curtain there.
That's awesome.
So if you can stop sharing your screen, and I don't know about you guys, but the questions started just pouring in. Like, as you started showing it, people were like, oh, does it do this? Does it do that? So here's the deal, guys. We have put links to demos down below. So if you look in chat, you get a link of Homebot, you get a demo. You get a demo of Mortgage Coach. Also, for anyone that attends this event, whether you're a Mortgage Coach member, you sign up for Homebot, or you're a Homebot member, you sign up for Mortgage Coach. This next Wednesday at 11 o'clock Pacific, I'm going to do a group personal coaching session where I will be there. A Mortgage Coach Success member will be there. We'll invite someone from Homebot. Andy, we would love to have you on that call if you can make it. And we will do fast track training, like how to go from I'm a loan officer to I'm a modern mortgage professional that's crushing it with retention, that's crushing it with conversion. I'm turning that into a competitive advantage with my realtors and partners. And we will give you a fast track training next Wednesday at 11 o'clock. So you've got the links, you can set up. We got 3 minutes left. I want to make sure, Ernie, any closing thoughts or anything you want to ask in these last 3 minutes of the call?
Well, I want to focus on something that Andy did and said when he was going through all that I think is so powerful. So Dave, both Mortgage Coach and Homebot, we're doing the same thing. We're providing rich, personalized content that can be presented and even in an automated way presented to prospects and past clients. And these systems work together to consistently just cranking out valuable, personalized content. But notice what Andy did when he was looking at the buyer's report. He was actually responding to the content with his own story around, oh, it's a 96. You're probably going to be in a bidding war. We got to get you more competitive around that. And that's what he did. He glazed over that really fast. Like, oh, everybody does that. Not everybody does that, Andy. It's the very first time I've ever heard a customer talk about the way they use that. But that's the magic here, is that when you've got Homebot and Mortgage Coach providing all of this personalized content that on its own, it's beautiful and consumers love it. Just remember, that's only half the story. The other half of the story is, how do you respond And what's your narrative? What's your helpful Captain of the Wealth team narrative around that content to take it to the next level? And I will just say this to fit it back into the context of our title today. The big guys aren't doing that. They can't do that. They aren't doing what we're talking about here. They're not providing consistently this personalized, beautiful content, whether you're a customer or not. And they certainly don't have the personal touch to lean into it with their take on it as a wealth advisor. So Andy, thank you for that. I'm going to reuse that. I'm going to send you 0.021 cents every time I use that tip and trick.
I'd take it. I'd take passive income, baby. That's awesome.
All right, guys. All right. So I want to give a closing thought, and I want you guys to write down an acronym. WACD, all caps, WACD. And most loan officers don't know what this acronym means, at least not yet. I've said it a lot from stages. So people that have heard me say it from stage, you know what it means. You could Google it. It's a thing. If you were in the specialty retail business, if you have not executed based on this acronym, you're either dead and you're out of business, or you're dying. Your shareholder value is not increasing. It's what Amazon can't do. You look at Best Buy. How are they making it, and how they make that turnaround? They started doing what Amazon can't do. And what does Nordstrom's do? They do what Amazon can't do. Like, hey, you can come into the store and have a great human local experience. And if we don't have it in the shop, anybody in that store is trained. Like, they can look it up and they're like, oh, you can get it at this store, or we can ship it to your house. What do you want? Click. They're doing what Amazon can't do. And so they're killing it. Now, everybody on this call, you need to add a Z to that. And I don't think everybody needs to know what Z stands for. WAZCD. What Amazon and Zillow can't do, you have to do. Guys, we gave you a playbook. Like rewatch this. Like, Andy does not care if Amazon gets into the mortgage business. He does not care that Zillow has a mortgage company. He does not care that Better.com is killing it and that there's 5 to 6 commercials on Super Bowls, because he's killing it for families. He's doing what they can't do, and he's doing what they can do. Shayla, the same thing. So everyone listen to this. Guys, we gave you the playbook. You can do it. These are 2 technologies that are they're essential to mortgage advisors. If you want to say, I'm a mortgage advisor and my advice makes a difference, and you want to be the best you can be, then you need to get on it. So we've gone a minute over, Andy, but since you are the lender and the mortgage rock star, any closing thoughts for you, brother?
Yeah, I've done this now for 20 years and starting my 21st year. And, back when I started, there really wasn't technology, right? I mean, we still hammered out 1003s on stone. And so, as technology continues to progress, basically what I've seen happen is at the start, with me as a new loan officer and some experienced loan officers, there really wasn't a difference. The only difference really was how many people I would go see, how many sales calls I would make, right? And then as technology started to come in, the gap started to widen a little bit. And I was fortunate enough to have found Loan Toolbox early and Mortgage Coach. What I'm saying is, this is my cautionary tale, okay? The mortgage industry is not only changing and growing and rapidly expanding, et cetera, but if you are not using these 2 technologies specifically, you may not notice it yet, but you are dramatically losing market share. You are falling behind the Shaylas of the world. You will find that there is going to be a larger gap in the average loan officer and then the other loan officer. It's going to be a tale of 2 classes. There's some loan officers that do a little bit of business. Then there's a few loan officers that do all the rest of the business. And I could venture to say that 90% of the ones that do most of the business will be using these 2 technologies. And if you're not on them yet, you should be.
I like that closing thought. And here is the slide. The links are in chat. If you're watching a recording, they're in there. Here's 2 links to get signed up. For the person that asked, like, how do I get into that Wednesday class? We know who you are. If you demoed the Mortgage Coach and if you signed up, we'll make sure you get an email. Guys, we are super grateful for an hour and 4 minutes of your time. Hopefully you got some takeaways, you got some script, you got some value. Ernie, It was awesome, bro. Give us a little bit, Andy.
There we go.
Andy, amazing stuff. That was amazing.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate you having me.
Take care, everybody. This is a wrap.